working on Science Policy Advisor for FVO. He focuses on refining funding policy for strategic basic research and is also involved in the evaluation of grant proposals in the FVO's funding streams. Earlier this year, the TBM trial program has moved from IWT to FVO, and his presentation will focus on this trials program and its impact.
Good afternoon. Thank you for the introduction. It appears that the post-lunch dip only occurs after 2 p.m., so I'm in a good time slot for my presentation. I'll tell you something about the impact the TBM program has had between 2006 and 2013. That will be the main focus of my presentation. But first, I'll tell you something about the TBM program itself. TBM stands for Applied Biomedical Research with a primary societal goal. And finally, we've made some changes for the next call for TBM, which I will be presenting as well as a sort of a preview for the next round. So, as was told during the introduction, the TBM program used to be part of IWT's funding activities, but as of 2016, FWO selects and funds the proposals. We're funding research into the development of new applications, so new diagnosis, development of a new therapy, or prevention of a specific disease. At the moment, we have about 14 million euros to spend, which is for 100% money that comes from the Flemish government. So a little bit more about the program itself. What are its key characteristics? Well, a proposal within the program should be aimed at the development of a new therapy, a new diagnosis, and or the prevention of a specific disease. It should have a positive impact on the Flemish health situation for a specific patient group. There should be a proof of concept, so it consists of late-stage translational research. And there should be no industrial interests. So if a commercial trial is possible, then it cannot be funded within the TBM funding program. So a little bit more details. Projects within this funding program typically have a budget between 250,000 euros and 1 million euros, for which 100% is funded. It consists of contract research, so projects are funded for the full duration of the research, unless, of course, the contract is not honored. Then the research is stopped and funding is stopped. A few examples of projects that have been funded in the past include interval training versus continuous training for heart patients. Another example, a very recent example, was hearing training, a project about audiological rehabilitation. Another example was about a weight control intervention to prevent weight gain between pregnancies. And the final example was a modern neuroscience approach for low back pain. So what all of these projects that were funded have in common is that there is a clear proof of concept for those studies, and the applications are not profitable for industry, or there are very low profit margins. So finally, the TBM program, what was its impact? This was studied by Technopolis, and their report was finished in 2013. So some general information. Most of the projects had a duration of about 4 years, so an average of 41 months. 50% were single center trials. In total, 33 organizations have been funded, but there was limited international participation. I asked, and there were some EORTC initiatives that were co-funded by IWT, so within the TBM program. So an important finding was that most projects met the scientific and technological goals. If there were problems with the project, they were mostly related to recruitment, which was the largest obstacle to reach the goals. In general, efforts to execute the clinical trials were underestimated by the researchers, and sometimes also competing trials put extra stress on recruitment. Some examples, some research centers didn't have a lot of experience in conducting clinical trials, so that proved problematic. Also, clinical experts changing hospitals proved difficult. And finally, sometimes cooperation was promised by the clinicians, but not honored. So that proved to be the biggest hurdle for the TBM, for the funded TBM project. Another important finding was, and I think I'll be repeating one of the previous presenters, was that for most investigators, for most project leaders, publication in a high-impact journal was very important, although this was not the focus of the program. We don't count publications. But output, scientific output, seems, however, very crucial to have a true societal impact. For example, inclusion in guidelines is more likely when results are published in a high-impact journal. Of the funded projects, about 70% showed positive results. So only 30% were not able to reach their goals. Of this 70%, 90%, so the positive results, 90% led to concrete applications in the field. Another percentage also had some spillover effects. Examples here include inclusion in a new guideline, new infrastructure, for example, a new lab or a treatment location, and also inclusion of the findings in the medical curriculum. So that meant that more expertise was created, not only in clinical practice, but also in clinical trial methodology, which is an important effect as well. To make it a little more concrete, one of the funded projects was on the use of azithromycin for severe asthma. There's only a limited population that suffers from severe asthma, but they cause a large part of the healthcare costs. So azithromycin was tested within the TBM program to treat severe asthma. And the interesting part about this antibiotic is that its patent has expired. So during the TBM project, it was found that azithromycin is in effect, is effective to treat asthma, and the cost of azithromycin was about 1% of the cost of the current treatment. Also important was that there was a reduction in emergency care and hospitalization as well. On the patient side, we saw that there was a reduction in absenteeism and also in unemployment. Moreover, the findings were also integrated in new guidelines. Another important finding regarding the TBM program, so specifically for the program, was that there was a clear impact on patient health, but it was harder to demonstrate the impact on healthcare as a whole. So we also found that patient health, of course, improved because of the funded projects, But there were some possibilities, some extra possibilities to include or to integrate the findings in other centers as well. This was not always done, so the findings weren't always integrated in other centers because, as I told you, 50% of the studies were single center trials, which didn't always have that as an outcome. So the general impact of the program, of course, increased patient health, increased effectiveness and efficacy. Those were the results that were most frequently reported, and to a lesser extent, higher life expectancy and a decrease in hospitalized patients. So another example of a concrete result that was found here in the TBM program was in vitro maturation, which was tested as an alternative to IVF. So couples who have difficulties becoming pregnant didn't have an alternative for IVF. And IVF requires a hormone treatment. And this hormone treatment could be life-threatening for women who have ovarian hyperstimulation syndrome. So IVM proved effective. And, well, actually also the cost of IVM is about 20 to 30% lower than that of IVF. Moreover, it was found that there were almost no complications with IVM as compared to IVF. Another, perhaps even more striking example of the impact the program could have was the LOGIC project, which was funded. So tight blood sugar control, TBS, saves lives, prevents complications of critical illness, and also reduces healthcare costs. But the problem is that TBS is very difficult in inexperienced ICUs. So within the LOGIC program, there was an algorithm that was developed and tested and implemented in user-friendly web-based software to aid ICUs in this TBS. It was found effective, and also it was found that during the large-scale RCT that was performed, that healthcare costs reduced about 205,000 euros per patient. So I think I need to repeat that during the study of Technopolis, it was mainly found that the impact of the TBM program was on the level of the patient and not so much on the level of the healthcare system as a whole. So we are planning some changes to the program in the near future. I think we were also a bit inspired by KCE, who just set up their program. So we're also planning to fund effectiveness studies of medical devices. It will also be possible, as of next year, to study the comparative cost efficiency of an intervention. And we will also allow an increased budget, so up to 1.5 million euros for large multi-center trials. So not for standard studies, but for large multi-center trials. To conclude, while making this presentation, I just realized that the TBM program is celebrating its 10th anniversary this year. So we didn't have any champagne, but yeah. So I sincerely hope it will remain successful in impacting on the Flemish healthcare situation for many years to follow. Thank you.
Question regarding the impact with azithromycin. So there was good result, it was in the guidelines, but could you also convince the manufacturers to put it in their label, that they ask for label extension? And is the product now reimbursed for that indication? I know it's cheap, but normally that should be the regulatory pathway to go if you have data.
Yeah.
Was that discussed, or is it the idea to try to maximize the impact of those projects?
I'm afraid I don't have that much details on the outcome of the project because, well, the program was shifted from IWT to FWO, so it's a new situation for us. But I can tell you that when new applications are entered within the call, then those factors are also taken into account, because we do not only look at the scientific part of the project, but also at the valorization, as we call it, so the dissemination in part, but also the implementation. So regulatory aspects would be a part of the TBM proposal as well. Yeah. But I cannot tell you anything about the azithromycin case as such.
Okay, that's a wonderful program, that's for sure. What I'm still missing is, in line with the UK system, that you up to now still exclude projects that are in a late translational phase. Because now you claim the project must have a very solid proof of concept before it is acceptable for evaluation. I think certainly with the biotechnology that exists in France or in Belgium, that you could open the program for late-stage translational research as an example.
I think this could be discussed within the FWO. I think we've made some changes now to broaden the scope of the program, but I think we should look at the specifics of your suggestion. I will take it home across the street, so to speak.
I have two questions. First, are international trials also possible? And in that case, can Flemish money go to foreign patients? The other one is, I think, one of your criteria is that if you have an industry partner, it should be Flemish-based. When will you stop that stupid regulation?
So I'll first answer your first question. So is it possible to include international partners? It is. On the funding level, up to 20% of funding can go to participants or research centers abroad. For what the application itself, for what concerns that, I do not believe there is a limitation with respect to the nationality of the industrial partner. Maybe you should wait for the microphone.
Hello, colleague of Frederik, but it's, according to my knowledge, there's not a possibility to act as a direct sponsor for industry in this program, because we mainly aim at applications which are not of relevance to the industrial pharmaceutical industry.
Yeah. In any case, that's quite important. As I told you in the beginning, there should be no industrial interest to perform the trial. But I can imagine that there might be projects with very low profit margins where maybe an industrial partner is included in an advisory board, or. But I don't think there's a limitation to the nationality of the participants in the advisory board.
Outsource partner to work with a company, that company should be based in France.
Well, we do work with, subcontractors can get part of the funding. So I don't think that's an issue.
But if you're going to include medical devices are constructed often by foreign companies. So at that point, obviously, the interest of the company will come into play when you apply.
That's true. That's true. We've been thinking about that. The problem is that sometimes there is no interest whatsoever to test the effectiveness of such a device because, well, maybe because that would mean a decrease in sales of the device, or and that would be a reason for us to actually fund the research. So it has to be well substantiated why the industry will not do such a trial, or maybe not on a short term.
And you definitely have to bear in mind also the consequences of that. We also saw this morning UK example of having a therapy that is better than physiotherapy, and all the physiotherapists obviously say why this is not true, and patients come on television. And so, in the end, the politicians will have to decide whether a negative result for a certain company or for a certain patient group is also implemented in the regulation. I think that's something which has not yet come into the discussion today. It's very important.
No, I think maybe as an extension to the answer I've given to the person sitting in front of you, that could be part of the valorization approach as well, including well, for example, government or RISIF or other parties in the advisory board to see how this can be overcome before actually starting the research, so that it doesn't land in a drawer, so to speak. Yeah.
A very brief question, if you've already mentioned my apologies, but who owns the data afterwards from an intellectual property perspective?
The data is property of the investigators. So, yeah. So we fund the research